A racial disparity study in Peoria paints a picture of poverty and unemployment, upon which the canvas many black Peorians are seemingly stuck to. It's been drawing attention for months, but black leaders say it shouldn't have taken an analyst to draw attention to something black communities have been dealing with for decades. It's through broad strokes of segregation that governing analysts who spent 6 months collecting data in Peoria recognize why the city is in trouble.
It's definitely fractured, without a doubt.
With a heavy heart, Pastor Marvin Hightower, Peoria NAACP president, says segregation is alive and real.
When you come down from Bradley, from the Main Street area, coming south, and once you cross Moss, you can almost literally feel the oppression.
But this didn't happen overnight. J. Brian Charles, an urban affairs reporter for Governing Magazine, points to industrial decline in the Midwest as a starting point for when things began to crumble.
Factories close and places, job prospects are getting worse.
He adds probably one of the hardest hits for Peoria was when Caterpillar reversed course on a plan to expand their corporate headquarters in the downtown area.
And you also have to think about Caterpillar's closing down some of its industrial operation. A lot of its corporate operation is there. And so the people who replaced some of those families that were, kind of engaged in more of the heavy lifting of industrial production get replaced by a lot of folks maybe at the executive level that end up going into the nicer homes in places like Dunlap and pulling those resources away.
And the lack of resources, he says, only magnified the segregation, which then bled into virtually every aspect of black lives in this city.
Access to jobs, access to quality education, access to safe neighborhoods, access to health care. Statistically, African Americans fare worse than their white counterparts.
Dr. Marwin Spiller, a local sociologist, says at the heart of it all is our local education. Federal data reveals the Peoria metro area has the most segregated schools between black and white students across the nation.
A school system that does not necessarily prepare all of its students in the same way to meet the demands of a modern economy.
City leaders agree, acknowledging the reality that many Peoria students are worried about far more than straight A's before even setting foot on school grounds.
Not knowing where the next meal coming from, or the water's going to be shut off, or living in a car homeless. And their mother may be in prison, their father may be in prison or dead. And so they're dealing with all kinds of psychological situations.
Marvin Hightower says Peoria Public Schools does a great job of introducing students to a variety of career opportunities, but things haven't always been that way.
And then they put a stigma on getting into a trade. Don't do vocational skill. Go to college. You'll be something.
Charles explains statistically, quality and access to education directly impacts future employment. 1 in 4 black Peoria residents don't have a job.
If you were to take a snapshot of 2017, black unemployment in the Peoria metro area is the highest in the country.
And for the 3 out of 4 that are clocking in,
they're either underemployed, they're working 2 and 3 jobs.
Which brings us to poverty. A 24/7 Wall Street study shows Peoria's black poverty rate 36% higher than the national average of 26.2%. The white poverty rate in Peoria, 9.2%.
When you already have lower incomes, and then your cost of borrowing money reduces your ability to have disposable income to invest.
Larry Ivory, president and CEO of the Illinois Black Chamber of Commerce, says a major solution, creating a space for entrepreneurship, an area black communities are barely charting locally.
If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Unfortunately, black people have been on the menu because they haven't been at the table.
The takeaway that all these black and white comparisons of education, upward mobility, and success show, while not true for every black Peorian, are certainly clear for many.
A salient marker of what it means to be African American in this community is to struggle.
When it comes to everyone having an equal slice of the pie, Peoria's racial breakdown isn't so sweet.
Policy normally drives our inability to have opportunities.
Local leaders say there's multiple forces at work when it comes to the severely unbalanced access scale for black and white residents.
I think there are some people who intentionally leave people out. They're comfortable with the group that they've been with.
While some believe it can be intentional, they also credit embedded racism, which they say almost goes undetected, simply because some systems are designed to leave people behind.
Capitalism can only thrive if there is a amount of poverty, and those who are at the bottom of the food chain, usually people of color.
While the solution may not be pretty,
It's going to take being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
they say it starts with diversity, but not just on the surface.
Diversity is not a color or a look, it's a mindset. Of course, they hired a diversity officer, which was a good move, but what does that really mean? Is it really about moving us a step up? Is it really opening access to opportunity?
And you just can't have a meeting and say, well, let's get together, let black people vent and talk about the issue.
Instead, some say the complexity of the racial divide is what really needs to go under the microscope. And that's done through good old-fashioned interaction.
If I don't live around you, I don't go to church with you, I don't play with you, the only thing I know about you is what I see on TV.
There have to be two things, wanting and a willing.
But beyond conversations is the grunt work, what advocates call rolling up your sleeves and taking action.
Don't come to me telling me how bad racism is if you're a Caucasian. Go to your group, to your people that you have influence, and tell them how bad it is. We already know.
And asking the right questions.
How do we attract black businesses? How do we incentivize black businesses to come in Peoria and set up shop?
Ivory suggests hosting financial literacy classes at barbershops and black churches, challenging other city leaders to meet people where they are.
We were intentionally left out, created a habit of being left out, and we created a culture of being left out. The only way to change that is to be intentionally included, create a habit of being included, and then we'll create a culture of inclusion.
Hightower says that can't happen until city leaders acknowledge an entire zip code of struggling residents. During local elections, he says he noticed something alarming.
A lot of the people that are running, their signs are not on the south end. That lets you know what the priority is.
Meanwhile, Dr. Marwin Spiller says big businesses need to be held accountable for how they impact black communities or how they don't.
You need strong policy. You need industries to pay their fair share.
He suggests offering black businesses the same tax breaks as their white counterparts. The list goes on, but mainly Hightower says black and white people alike should recognize the power of their own advocacy.
And just to come to the Horseshoe on Tuesday night is not enough. That's good. Get involved in commissions too. Lead a commission and get to know other people that you don't know.